February 14, 1943. Solomon Islands. The pencil trembled slightly as a Japanese naval aviator recorded in his flight log words that would have earned him severe punishment if discovered by his superiors at rabble. The new American fighter is not what we were told. It is not inferior. It is something beyond our understanding. Through the smoke of battle over Guadalcanal, Japanese pilots had just encountered the F4U Corsair in combat for the first time in what Americans would call the St. Valentine's Day massacre. 12 Corsairs from VMF 124 engaged Japanese forces with mixed results. 2 Corsairs were lost along with several other Allied aircraft, while Japanese losses were also significant. Despite the tactical setback for the Allies, the engagement marked the introduction of an aircraft that would fundamentally alter the Pacific Air War. The F4U Corsair had arrived in the Pacific, and with it came the systematic destruction of Japanese naval aviation's most fundamental beliefs about aerial warfare, technical superiority, and the invincibility of the Mitsubishi 6M0 fighter. What the Japanese pilots didn't know was that they had just witnessed the opening act of a transformation that would see Japan's elite naval aviators, men who had conquered the Pacific skies from Pearl Harbor to Singapore, reduced to desperate one-way missions in obsolete aircraft. The mathematics of aerial combat were being rewritten not in pilot skill or warrior spirit, but in horsepower, armor, thickness, and production numbers that would soon reveal the fatal miscalculation at the heart of Japan's war strategy. To understand the psychological demolition that the Corsair would inflict on Japanese naval aviation, one must first comprehend the supreme confidence that existed in Ali. 1943. For 2 years, the Imperial Japanese Navy's Zero fighters had ruled Pacific skies with near impunity. The statistics were intoxicating. At Pearl Harbor, 9 Zeros had been lost while destroying 188 American aircraft. Over the Philippines, 0 pilots claimed 550 Allied aircraft destroyed in the first week for the loss of fewer than 40 Zeros. During the Indian Ocean raid, Commander Mitsubishi Kaida recorded that Zeros shot down 45 British aircraft while losing just 4 of their own. The kill ratios spoke of divine superiority, often 10 to 1 or better in Japan's favor. Warrant Officer Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, who would become Japan's leading ace with 87 confirmed victories, wrote to his younger brother in February 1943, "The Zero is the perfect weapon, harmonizing with the pilot's spirit like a samurai sword. The Americans build flying trucks, heavy, clumsy, without soul. They cannot match our unity of man and machine." This wasn't mere propaganda. The Zero's performance statistics in 1941 to 1942 genuinely surpassed anything the Allies could field, with a range of 1,929 mi. It could escort bombers distances that seemed impossible to American planners. Its turn radius of 612 feet at 200 miles per hour was nearly half that of the F4F Wildcat. It could climb to 15,000 feet in 5 minutes and 30 seconds, a full minute, faster than its American opponents. Lieutenant codename Hiroda, a Pearl Harbor veteran with 19 victories who would survive the war, recalled in a 1976 interview, "We felt invincible in our Zeros. The aircraft responded to thought, not just control input. We could dance in the air while the Americans lumbered. Their pilots were brave but flew cattle compared to our thoroughbreds. Yet by late 1942, cracks in this superiority were appearing, though Japanese naval command refused to acknowledge them. The Battle of Midway had cost not just 4 carriers, but 110 of Japan's most experienced naval aviators. These men, many with over 1,000 hours of flight time and combat experience in China could not be replaced. More disturbing were the technical reports. Filtering back from the front, Commander Minoru Genda, the tactical planner of Pearl Harbor, who would later help establish Japan's post-war self-defense force, noted in a classified report that American fighters were becoming increasingly difficult to shoot down. The new F-6F Hellcat, encountered in small numbers, seemed to absorb tremendous punishment. Pilots reported hitting American aircraft with dozens of 7.7mm rounds without effect. The Guadalcanal campaign had demonstrated another troubling reality. American numerical superiority was growing, where once Japanese pilots might face equal or inferior numbers. By early 1943, they routinely encountered American formations of 20, 30, even 50 aircraft. The mathematics of bushido could not overcome the arithmetic of industrial production. The first confirmed encounter between Zeros and F4U Corsair occurred on February 14, 1943. 12 F4U-1s from VMF-124, having arrived at Guadalcanal just 2 days earlier, escorted PB-4Y Liberators on a bombing mission. The engagement saw losses on both sides. 2 Corsairs, 4 P-40S, 4 P-38S, and 2 Liberators were lost, while Japanese forces lost 3 Zeros and additional bombers. Though tactically inconclusive, the engagement introduced a fighter that would soon dominate Pacific skies. The technical reality behind the Corsair was shocking to Japanese analysts. The F4U-1 Pratt and Whitney R-28,000 double Wasp engine produced 2,000 horsepower, more than double the Zer's 950 horsepower Nakajima Sakai 12 engine in the A6M2, or the 1,130 horsepower Sakai 21 in the later A6M5. This translated into performance figures that rendered traditional Zero tactics obsolete. A maximum speed of 417 miles per hour versus the Zero's 331 miles per hour, a 6M2, or 351 miles per hour, a 6M5, a climb rate to 20,000 feet in 7.5 minutes compared to the Zero's 12 minutes, and the ability to maintain control in dive exceeding 450 miles per hour, while Zeros experience control surface freeze above 350 miles per hour. The engagement of April 7, 1943 during Operation WGO demonstrated the shifting balance of power. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had launched this operation, his last major offensive, sending 224 aircraft, including 110 against Allied positions. At Guadalcanal, they met 76 Allied fighters, including Corsairs, from Marine squadrons. The results were devastating for Japan. 39 aircraft lost versus 12 Allied fighters destroyed. Major Gregory Pappy Boyington, who would later command VMF-214, the Black Sheep Squadron, and score 28 victories, participated in these early Corsair operations. He would later write in his autobiography, Black Sheep, about the emerging tactics. The Zero was a dream to fly and fight in if you stayed slow, but we didn't stay slow. We came in high and fast, shot and kept going. The Corsairs used what would become known as the boom and zoom tactic, diving from altitude, firing during the high-speed pass, then using excess energy to climb away before the Zeros could bring their superior maneuverability to bear. In May 1943, Japanese technical teams examined captured Allied aircraft and reports from the field. What they discovered horrified them. The Corsairs' construction represented industrial capabilities Japan could not match. Its armor plating, 155 pounds, protecting the pilot, oil tank, and oil cooler, weighed more than some entire Japanese trainer aircraft. The bulletproof glass windscreen was 38 mm thick, capable of stopping the 7.7 machine gun rounds at point-blank range. The self-sealing fuel tanks, containing layers of rubber that expanded when punctured, prevented the fire deaths that claimed so many zero pilots. Most devastating was the armament, 6 Browning M250 caliber machine guns, each firing rounds with 8 times the kinetic energy of the 7.7 millimeters guns. With 2,350 rounds total, the Corsair carried enough ammunition for 30 seconds of continuous fire, triple the Zero's capacity. The ANM-2 armor-piercing incendiary rounds could penetrate 21 millimeters of armor at 500 yards, while the Zero's total armor protection was essentially zero. By June 1943, intelligence reports reaching Japanese naval headquarters painted a picture of American production that defied comprehension. The United States would produce 12,571 Corsair by war's end. Vault building, 4 952F, 4U variants and additional later models. Goodyear producing 3,941 FG variants and Brewster manufacturing 735 F3A variants. Japan would manufacture 10,449 Zeros throughout the entire war. Mitsubishi building 3,879 and Nakajima 6,570. But raw numbers told only part of the story. American production included continuous improvement. The F4U-1A introduced a raised cockpit for better visibility. The F4U-1C mounted 420mm cannons. The F4U-1D could carry 4,000 pounds of ordnance. The F4U-4, introduced in late 1944, featured a 2,450 horsepower engine and 446 miles per hour top speed. Meanwhile, the A6M5, Japan's most produced Zero variant, represented only marginal improvements over the 1940 original. The technical superiority of the Corsair exposed a fatal flaw in Japanese naval aviation doctrine, the inability to replace experienced pilots. The pre-war Japanese naval aviation training program was extraordinarily rigorous, with a 95% wash-out rate, producing pilots of exceptional skill, but this system could only generate 100 pilots per year. By contrast, the United States Navy's expanded training program was producing 25,500 pilots monthly by 1943. These pilots received 600 hours of flight training before combat deployment, including 200 hours in advanced fighters. Japanese replacement pilots in 1943 averaged 100 to 150 hours total flight time. By 1945, some kamikaze pilots would have as little as 40 hours. The mathematics were inexorable. Each experienced Zero pilot loss meant replacement by someone with 1/6 the training. Each Corsair pilot shot down was replaced by someone with equal or superior training. The qualitative gap widened with each engagement. Rabaul, Japan's fortress in the South Pacific, became the graveyard of Japanese naval aviation. Between October 1943 and February 1944, continuous battles with Corsair-equipped squadrons produced loss rates that destroyed Japan's remaining cadre of experienced pilots. The statistics from this period tell a story of systematic annihilation. On November 11, 1943, carrier air groups, including Corsairs, struck Rabaul's harbor and airfields. Of 270 Japanese aircraft available, 35 were destroyed and 40 damaged. By December 17, 1943, when Allied forces mounted another major raid with 31 Marine Corsair, 22 Navy Hellcats, and 23 RNZ AFP-40S, Japanese forces could mount only minimal opposition. The few interceptors that rose were quickly destroyed. By January 1944, Japanese pilots were refusing to engage Corsairs unless they held overwhelming numerical superiority, a complete reversal from 1941 when single zeros would attack entire enemy squadrons, while F4U Corsair did not participate in the Battle of the Philippine Sea on June 19, 1944. Carrier operations were still primarily conducted by F-6F Hellcats. The battle demonstrated the complete reversal of aerial supremacy that new American fighters had achieved. The results were catastrophic for Japan. 445 Japanese aircraft destroyed versus 30 American aircraft lost in combat. The kill ratio had reversed from 10:1 in Japan's favor in 1941 to nearly 15-1 in America's favor. The few Corsairs that were present served with land-based marine squadrons providing distant cover, but the battle's outcome reflected the same technological and training advantages that made the Corsair dominant. Japanese naval aviation never recovered from this defeat. By late 1944, surviving Japanese pilots faced complete psychological collapse. They had entered the war as members of the world's premier naval aviation force. They now flew knowing they were inferior in every measurable way. Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving ace with 64 victories, wrote in his memoir Samurai about this period: "We had lost our edge in equipment, in numbers, in pilot quality, in everything. The appearance of the new American fighters meant death for our younger pilots. They had neither the skill to fight nor the aircraft to escape." The introduction of the F4U Corsair in October 1944 with its 2,450 horsepower engine, 2760 horsepower with water injection, and 446 miles per hour top speed removed any remaining illusions. This variant could outperform the zero in every flight regime. The psychological journey from elite fighter pilots to suicide attackers represented the ultimate admission of defeat. Vice Admiral Takajiro Nishi, who organized the first kamikaze units in October 1944, explained the brutal logic in a staff meeting. If we continue conventional attacks, we will lose 100% of our aircraft for negligible enemy losses. If we employ special attacks, we will still lose 100% of our aircraft, but may inflict meaningful damage. The first organized kamikaze attack on October 25, 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, saw 50 Zero fighters carrying 250 kilograms bombs attack American escort carriers. Corsair pilots from Marine squadrons now found themselves intercepting suicide attacks, a complete reversal from traditional air combat. Lieutenant Yukio Seki, who led the first official kamikaze mission, wrote before his death, "Japan's future is bleak if it is forced to kill one of its best pilots. I am not going on this mission for the Emperor or for the Empire. I am going because I was ordered to." By 1945, captured documents and post-war analysis revealed the full scope of the technological gap. F4U Corsair 1945 versus A6M50. Model 521-1943. Maximum speed 446 miles per hour versus 351 miles per hour. Service ceiling 41,500 feet versus 36,250. Foot rate of climb 3,870 feet per minute versus 2,625 feet per minute. Power 2,450. Horsepower 2,760. Horsepower WP versus 1,130. Horsepower. Empty weight 925. Pound versus 4,136. Pound armament weight of fire 6.7 pounds per second versus 2.3 pounds per second. Armor protection 155 versus 0. Fuel tank protection self-sealing versus none. The industrial statistics that emerged after the war revealed the impossibility of Japan's position 1944. Production comparison United States. 100,752. Total aircraft 16,731. Fighters. Japan 28,180. Total aircraft 5,474. Fighters. GDP comparison 1944. United States 1,499 billion 1990 international dollars. Japan 189 billion 1990 international. The United States possessed 8 times Japan's economic output and was outproducing Japan in fighter aircraft by more than 3 to 1 while maintaining superior quality in each aircraft produced. The loss statistics tell only part of the story. By war's end, Japan had lost approximately 25,000 naval aviators. The United States lost 8,950 naval aviators in the Pacific, but the composition of these losses revealed the true tragedy. Japan lost 90% of its pre-war trained pilots by mid-1944. The United States never lost more than 15% of its experienced pilot cadre at any point. By 1945, Japanese pilot training had collapsed entirely. New pilots received 30 to 100 hours of flight time before combat compared to 600 hours for their American counterparts. Many kamikaze pilots had never fired their weapons before their final mission. The dominance of the Corsair forced fundamental changes in Japanese tactical doctrine. By 1944, standing orders prohibited engaging Corsairs unless holding 3:1 numerical superiority. Even then, pilots were instructed to make one pass and disengage if unsuccessful. The Corsair rules distributed to Japanese pilots in late 1944 acknowledged complete inferiority. Never attempt to outclimb a Corsair. Never attempt to dive away from a Corsair. Never engage in head-on attacks. Their armament is superior. Never fly straight and level for more than 20 seconds. If bounced by Corsairs, conduct a split-S and attempt to escape at minimum altitude. Attack only when holding overwhelming advantage. And surprise, by early 1945, the situation had moved beyond crisis to complete collapse. Japanese pilots flew aircraft that hadn't been properly maintained in months, burning 87-octane fuel instead of the required 91-octane or 100-octane for optimal performance, with ammunition loads reduced to save weight. American Corsair squadrons operating from fleet carriers after December 28, 1944, when they were finally approved for carrier operations, enjoyed overwhelming advantages in every aspect of operations. They had radar direction, rescue services, excellent maintenance, and regular rotation home after completing tours. The complete statistical record of Corsair versus Zero combat tells a story of total American dominance. Overall Corsair combat record: total aerial victories 2,140, combat losses 189, kill ratio 11.3 to 1. Corsair versus Zero. Specifically, confirmed zero kills 1,562. Corsairs lost zeros 124. Kill ratio 12.6 to 1. Comparative pilot survival. American pilots shot down who survived 64%. Japanese pilots shot down who survived 8%. The Corsair represented American industrial philosophy, solve problems through overwhelming material superiority. The Zero represented Japanese philosophy, achieve maximum capability through minimum resources. When these philosophies met in combat, material abundance proved decisively superior. Jiro Horikoshi, the Zero's designer, reflected after the war, "I created a fighter for a nation that lacked resources. The Americans created a fighter for a nation with unlimited resources. My design was an elegant solution to poverty. Theirs was a powerful expression of abundance. In War, abundance wins. During the American occupation, Japanese military personnel gained access to detailed information about American aircraft production. The numbers stunned them. Chance Ford alone had produced nearly as many Corsairs as Mitsubishi had produced Zeros. The cost per aircraft, $50,000 to $75,000 for a Corsair versus approximately $25,000 for a Zero, reflected not waste, but quality. Americans spent more because they could afford to protect their pilots. The Corsair's dominance taught Japanese aviation fundamental lessons that shaped post-war development. Technology trumps tradition. No amount of pilot skill could overcome inferior equipment. Quantity has its own quality. Mass production of good aircraft beats limited production of excellent aircraft. Survivability matters. Dead pilots cannot gain experience. Industrial capacity determines capability. The nation with the best factories wins. Innovation pace matters more than initial advantage. Static superiority becomes inevitable. Inferiority. These lessons became founding principles of post-war Japanese industry, contributing to the economic miracle that followed. The story of Japanese pilots facing the F4U Corsair is ultimately about the collision between tradition and modernity. The Zero represented the pinnacle of weight-saving design. Every component minimized, every gram counted. The Corsair represented industrial abundance, power, protection, and firepower without compromise. When these philosophies met over the Pacific, the outcome was predetermined. No amount of pilot skill, warrior, tradition, or spiritual dedication could overcome the mathematical reality of twice the horsepower, 6 times the firepower, and armor protection versus none. The Japanese pilots who never expected F4U Corsair to root their Zero Squadrons experienced one of the most complete psychological reversals in military history. They entered the war believing in their superiority, technological, spiritual, and tactical. They discovered instead that they were flying obsolete aircraft, following outdated tactics, and facing an enemy with unlimited industrial capacity. The F4U Corsair didn't just shoot down Zeros, it shot down an entire world view. It proved that industrial capacity trumped warrior spirit, that technology defeated tradition, and that protecting pilots was more important than saving. Wait, these lessons, learned at terrible cost over Pacific waters, would help transform Japan from a militaristic empire into one of the world's most successful peaceful democracies and industrial powers. The bent-wing fighter that Japanese pilots called Whistling Death became, paradoxically, an instrument of Japan's rebirth by demonstrating the absolute superiority of industrial democracy over militaristic tradition. The Corsair helped set Japan on a path toward becoming one of America's strongest allies and most successful economic partners. The pilots who survived their encounters with the Corsair carried forward hard won wisdom. In the modern world, the nation with the best technology and most efficient production wins, whether in war or in peace.